Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tercentenary Theatre in Harvard Yard on the occasion of the 360th Harvard Commencement. This is the annual afternoon exercises sponsored by the Harvard Alumni Association, and I'm here with my colleague Nancy Sinsabaugh to bring you a little idea of what we're seeing as we go on into the afternoon toward the actual exercises themselves, which will feature talks by President Drew Faust and a speech by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, President of Liberia in Africa.
Pleasure to be with you again today, here to help celebrate Harvard's 360th commencement. We would like to extend a particular welcome to Harvard's newest alumni, the 6,442 men and women who graduated this morning and joined the Fellowship of Educated Men and Women. And we would also like to welcome their parents, their spouses, and their families who have supported them throughout the years of their studies.
You're seeing right now some of the oldest alumni in attendance, classes of the late 30s, 1940. These are a remarkable group of people to still be enjoying the delights of this day in a beautiful, beautiful Harvard Yard. I must say, the gods of the weather are smiling on us today, and after the last month, they really ought to be smiling.
Jeffrey, there are more than 4,000 Harvard alumni, Harvard and Radcliffe alumni who are with us these days to celebrate the Harvard reunions. We just saw the oldest reunion class here with us today, the class of 1941, which are celebrating their 70th reunion this week. Our 25th reunion class, which is always the hallmark of the alumni exercises in the afternoon, the great class of 1986 has chosen Arnie Duncan, the U.S. Secretary of Education, as the chief marshal of these alumni exercises, and we will be seeing Arnie Duncan lead the parade a little bit later.
He's an impressive guy. He said earlier today that when he arrived in Cambridge, having been away for a couple of years, for this occasion, he was given an honor guard. And he said he'd never had an honor guard before, but he kind of got to like it. And he, like those members of the honor guard, pleased to quit their jobs and come to Washington and hang around for a while.
And there we see the Chief Marshal with his honor guard standing on the steps of Widener Library. They will stand there to watch the parade pass in front of them before they too join the parade and come to the platform for the afternoon ceremony.
Class of 1947. A lot of these guys served in the war, came back after interrupting their studies and joined the class of 1947 or 48 or 49. A lot of people out of course, but here they are, the long chain stretching back into the past.
The Harvard Alumni exercises came from the period in the early 1640s when Harvard founded in 1636, the first classes in 1638. And in the early years of the college, the elders of the Massachusetts Bay Colony were concerned that the college would not survive. They needed the college to train ministers, Puritan ministers, for the colony. And so it was decided that the elders of the colony would come during commencement to hear the orations, the debates, and the lectures, and then cheer on the graduates. And of course, every year, the graduates from previous year, the alumni, were invited back. And so fairly quickly, the alumni started to outnumber the number of dignitaries from the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And this is where the uniquely American tradition of college reunions was started, right here in Harvard Yard.
Those early observances of commencement and the excitement that went with could become pretty exciting in itself, pretty rowdy. And on occasion, there was a good deal of interaction with the local constabulary. Those of us who serve as marshals in the morning of commencement still carry batons, which are relics, so to speak, of the batons that were carried by the constabulary in the 17th century, trying to keep things under control. Vast quantities of alcoholic beverage were consumed by people we now think of as Puritans. They certainly considered themselves Puritans, but they were not above a little celebration.
Indeed, in the 17th and 18th century, they were quite celebratory here in Harvard Yard. Not only, Jeffrey mentioned, they served alcohol, but also sometimes they brought in elephants, sometimes they brought in people dressed as mermaids and mummies to join in the celebrations. Jeffrey, I'm sorry to say I don't think we'll see any elephants or mermaids or mummies today.
We haven't seen any for a long time, which is not to say we won't see their like again, but not today.
At Harvard, we call our graduation day commencement. It comes from the Latin word incipio, which means beginning. The first Harvard commencement was held in September of 1642. Though Harvard was founded in 1636, the first classes weren't held until 1638, and the first commencement happened 4 years later. Some people wonder why, if this is Harvard's 375th year, having been founded in 1636, people ask, why is this the 360th commencement and not the 375th? The answer is, in the early years of the college, if there weren't any men who had finished their studies, they didn't have a commencement. And also during the American Revolution from 1773 to 1780, Harvard suspended commencement, and indeed, many of those years there were no classes because of the revolution.
A great many people were off fighting in that revolution. Some actually went to Canada, preferring to stick with the Royals, and others joined the Continental Army, which formed initially. Washington first took command of the Continental Army right across the street from Harvard Yard on Cambridge Common under what came to be called the Washington Elm, which has since departed, which is probably a good thing, as it was located in the middle of the street in the 20th century, which I think is as long as it lasted. There is now something resembling a manhole cover in the middle of the street, which marks the location of the original elm under which General Washington took command of the Continental Army.
As we see the 50th reunion class of 1961, we would like to talk about the Alumni Parade, which is a centuries-old Harvard tradition. Every year we have our alumni who parade there. We are the 50th reunion class of 1961. And during Harvard's bicentennial year in 1836, the alumni festivities were particularly exuberant. Ralph Waldo Emerson of the Harvard class of 1821, the great American philosopher, the sage of Concord, wrote about the annual Harvard Alumni Parade on that day in July 1836. Cambridge at any time is full of ghosts, but on that day the anointed eye saw the crowd of spirits that mingled with the procession in the vacant spaces, year by year as the classes proceeded, and then the far longer train of ghosts that followed the company of the men that wore before us the college honors and laurels of the state, the long winding train reaching back into eternity. One of the things I love about Commencement Day is I think about the men and women who have graduated here for now 375 years, the long winding train reaching back into eternity. And I love to think about the spirits that are here with us in the yard today.
Many, many spirits, I think, and many memories. People who come back here year after year, not just during their reunion years, but come back every year primarily to see each other and to be increasingly joyful as they recognize friends who go back themselves a long way. It's a time when old friends can mingle and talk and exchange news about themselves, and it's really a great afternoon occasion. Commencement itself in the morning is a good deal more formal, with less opportunity for pleasantry.
And here we see part of the long winding train of alumni reaching back into eternity. This is a day where we come together to enjoy one another's company and to remember those who have gone before us. It is a great celebration of the joy of learning. Commencement originally happened in September, but over the centuries, these festivities have moved earlier and earlier. The commencement date is fixed as the 38th Thursday after the beginning of fall term. So here we are today on May 26th in Harvard Yard.
It should be pointed out to those of you who are surprised to see a Harvard commencement taking place in May that last year, after several years of preparation, Harvard's academic schedule, calendar, was changed to begin school quite a good deal earlier in August rather than in September, and then have commencement in May, so that undergraduates especially were able to leave school in time to go to work for summer or for internships, and have a chance to join the workforce, such as it is. And that seems to have been a good idea. It's more in keeping with what other institutions around the country do. And while Harvard changes slowly, it does in fact change.
Jeffrey, people often ask me, why is commencement on Thursday? In the 19th century, athletic contests were added to the annual commencement and alumni festivities, which usually lasted for a full week. The commencement had to be coordinated with the timing of these athletic contests, and the baseball contest between Harvard and Yale took place on Wednesday. The crew races took place on Friday, and so that left Thursday as the day for commencement, and we honor that tradition even today. People wonder why. People think that the Ivy League derives from the fact that we see ivy all around us on our buildings and on the walls of other institutions. In fact, the Ivy League was the first athletic conference in the United States, consisting of Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, and Princeton. There were 4 schools. The Roman numeral 4, Jeffrey, as you know, is an I with a V. That's how we got the name Ivy League, and today we call it Ivy League, IVY, but the origin comes from the Roman numeral 4.
That's true, and it's a good thing that we know that, because several years ago Harvard mounted a vigorous campaign to remove all the ivy from its buildings, because the ivy was in fact making the mortar crumble, and if they had not removed it, would have caused quite a lot of damage to most of these buildings in the yard, not to mention others far and wide. So there isn't much ivy anymore, and though their song, The Halls of Ivy, still obtains, the Ivy League comes from another derivation.
We just saw a shot of the statue of John Harvard, which graces Harvard Yard. In fact, we have no idea what John Harvard looked like. He was a minister here in Charlestown. He emigrated with the Great Migration of the Puritans in 1630. He was educated at Emmanuel College in Cambridge. And when he died in 1638, he left all of his library and half of his fortune to the college here, which was then called New College. And in gratitude for that gift, they renamed the college Harvard College. At the same time, they renamed the town, which had been called Newtown, they renamed it Cambridge in honor of Cambridge, England, Cambridge University in Cambridge, England.
Yeah, John Harvard's library was a fairly substantial one, and half his fortune was the equivalent of the annual income that Harvard was gaining from such sources as tolls on ferry boats, on bridges, raffles, auctions, what have you. So he did okay. I think it was something in excess of 400 pounds, which in those days was a fair sum.
And that money allowed Harvard College to hire professors and begin teaching in 1638.
Shortly thereafter, a group was deputized to go to England on Harvard's first fundraising foray, and they came home with money for scholarships, financial aid, and that money went into a fund which is still extant in Harvard's endowment. Harvard's endowment took a real beating in 2008-9, as did most of the endowments in this country. But it's on its way back, and I'm sure that Harvard's active fundraisers will see to it that it is soon replenished.
This afternoon's exercises are sponsored by the Harvard Alumni Association, which is a global network of more than 300,000 alumni. The president of the Harvard Alumni Association, Robert Bowie of the Harvard College class of 1973, a lawyer from Baltimore, Maryland, will preside over the festivities this afternoon. And we will be hearing also from the president of Harvard, Drew Gilpin Faust. James Rothenberg, the treasurer of the university, will give the report on giving. And we will also be hearing from Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the president of the Republic of Liberia.
Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is quite a remarkable human being. She now leads her country. For years under Presidents Doe and Taylor, who were, we won't say tyrants, but we'll say they did not exercise their power with any particular discretion. She was threatened. She was actually jailed for a year or more, and she came back to triumph ultimately in a free election and to lead her country out of 2 decades of violence, and is still leading it. She spent time here at Harvard at the Kennedy School, which she has said had a huge impact on her and enabled her to go back and lead with greater and greater expertise and authority. She also spent time with the World Bank as, in fact, quite a distinguished economist in her own right.
Also this afternoon, Harvard will be awarding medals to several alumni for their extraordinary service to Harvard. The first medal will be going to Al Carnesale, who received his master's degree in 1978, the former dean of Harvard's Kennedy School, former provost of the university, and former acting president of Harvard will receive the first of the 3 medals. Francis Ferguson, master's degree 1966, PhD 1973, the former president of Harvard's Board of Overseers and also the former president of Vassar College will also receive a Harvard medal. And the third recipient is Peter Malkin, class of 1955, summa cum laude, with a doctorate, his law degree from 1958, who has been an overseer and who has served on countless university committees. We will be seeing the three of them, who will each be awarded a Harvard medal this afternoon.
Peter Malkin is indeed truly a university citizen. He has been extraordinarily generous to the college, to the law school, and to the Kennedy School. The Malkin family gave money to refurbish what had been the indoor athletic building, which would be familiar to many of you who out there, alumni who were here at Harvard up until the 80s, and refurbished the indoor athletic building, and it's been named the Malkin Athletic Center.
The oldest alumnus here with us today is Donald Brown from the class of 1930 from Stowe, Massachusetts. We will be introducing him later in the program, and however, the alum from the oldest class is George Barner, who is younger than Donald Brown, but he graduated in 1929. And the oldest Radcliffe alum with us today is Marjorie Prince Thomas from the class of 1942, and she is 92 years old.
Bless him. It's a wonderful thing to be vertical at that age, and for years we've watched these wonderful older alumni come in and sit at the front of the theater, the front rows. I can remember actually seeing people well past the age of 100 who still delighted in coming back to commencement. I remember another alumnus who was ready to come at the age of 103 and fell and broke his hip. He was mad as hops that he couldn't be here. He'd been waiting for 83 years to be the oldest alum, and didn't make it.
As we mentioned earlier, this week is reunion week here at Harvard. We have the 50th, 55th, 60th, 65th, and 70th reunion classes who have their reunions from Sunday to Thursday, and then the younger classes, so the 5th, 10th, 15th, 20th, 25th, and 35th. Their reunions start either last night, Wednesday night, or today and go until Sunday. There are more than 4,000 alumni who come back for reunions. And Jeffrey, every year reunion classes set records for classmate attendance at reunions.
And they compete with one another in that regard. They also compete in terms of how much money each class can raise. And later on, you will be hearing something about how much money has been raised this year. This is not a fundraising event, but we do hear the results of the fundraising year a little later on from Jim Rothenberg.
Jeffrey, I'm happy to say today's my 35th reunion.
Congratulations.
Thank you, and I'm happy to say that we have set a new record. We're setting a new record for 35th reunion attendance. The previous record was 380, and as of yesterday, we had 383 alumni, and the number continues to go up. So we will be setting a new record for 35th reunion attendance.
Outbeating the bushes.
Bushes,
they
right.
can walk, they come.
Exactly.
Next year is my 50th, and I don't think we'll get that many, but we might. You never know. My son's 25th is today, so reunions count. It's a very important moment to come here with your classmates and celebrate that kind of reunion.
Today we will have a special celebration this afternoon. You can see a couple of members of the Wampanoag tribe. We will be honoring the Native American Joel Yakomis, who was a member of the Wampanoag tribe of the Harvard class of 1665, who finished his studies, but he died, unfortunately, before his degree could be awarded. So his degree will be awarded to the chief of the Wampanoag tribe posthumously this afternoon.
Harvard originally, in fact, was established to educate not only the youth of the colony, by which generally was meant the younger sons of merchants and the like, but also to educate Native Americans. When King Philip's War came along in the mid-17th century, that kind of put a damper on educating Native Americans because it was a fierce struggle that lasted in this part of the country for quite a while and resulted in quite a lot of death on both sides. Anyway, this is the awarding of a degree that is long overdue.
This morning, 9 people were awarded honorary degrees. Our speaker for this afternoon, Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Sir Timothy John Berners-Lee, who is the MIT professor who actually first developed the World Wide Web, Placido Domingo, the opera singer, the Honorable Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Supreme Court Justice, Dudley Hirschbach, longtime chemistry professor here at Harvard and a Nobel Prize winner. Here we see a couple of members of the Wampanoag tribe in their tribal dress awaiting the beginning of our ceremonies this afternoon. James Houghton, the longtime senior fellow of the Harvard Corporation, Rosalind Krauss, John Pocock, and David Satcher all received their honorary degrees this morning.
It was a great morning, not only weather-wise, but the highlight for me was when Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg, was awarded her honorary degree. Instead of her name being sung out by the provost, as is customary, instead, Placido Domingo stood up and sang a little aria, substituting words for Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Harvard Commencement. It was a grand moment. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is known, among other things, for her avid, enthusiastic following of opera. She's a real aficionada, and I'm sure that she was hugely pleased by having the greatest tenor of the past century sing right to her. Good moment.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg began her legal studies here at Harvard Law School, but then she was married and she moved to New York and she finished at Columbia Law School. So I imagine for her, she finally has her Harvard Law degree. The first recipient of an honorary degree was Benjamin Franklin, who received his honorary degree in 1753 for his scientific experiments, and most particularly for his experiments and discovery of electricity. It's interesting to me, Jeffrey, that he received his honorary degree before he even began his career as a politician and a diplomat.
It's true, and it served him well. He subsequently went to Paris, of course, as you know, and spent a great deal of time raising money for the revolutionary government and forces in this country before returning to become something of the grand old man of the early days of the Republic.
He had hoped that he was born in Boston, and he had hoped to actually attend Harvard College, but his father didn't think it was worth spending money on an education, and so Franklin ran away to Philadelphia, and the rest is history, and he received his degree in 1753. The first woman to receive an honorary degree from Harvard was Helen Keller of the Radcliffe class of 1904. And her citation read, "From a still dark world, she has brought us light and sound. Our lives are richer for her faith and her example."
I was going to say that while Justice Ginsburg didn't get her Harvard Law degree until today, she seems to have managed to do quite well without it, and is truly one of the distinguished jurists of our time, just as solid as she can be.
Jeffrey, I must say today I really miss the presence of the Reverend Peter Gomes, who was the longtime university minister to Harvard, who often presided over these festivities and who both welcomed the freshmen with the service and said goodbye to the seniors with the baccalaureate service on commencement morning. I wanted to read something written by the dearly departed Reverend Gomes, something he wrote about commencement at Harvard. Someone, observing the rather casual dignity of the day, remarked that commencement is more like a lawn party than a ballet, and a less charitable but more astute observer suggested that the vast assemblage in formation in the old yard was very much like that wonderfully chaotic game of croquet with flamingos and hedgehogs in Alice in Wonderland. First-time visitors to the scene are rather horrified at what appears to be rank confusion, but then they remember that this is, after all, Harvard, where conformity, even of self-preservation, has been elevated to the rank of an original sin. That it works at all is a tribute to the patience and goodwill and the general sense that, come what may, the day is to be enjoyed.
Indeed. And we're seeing the stage. There's Peter Malkin to the rear with glasses on the left, and other dignitaries. Harvard's corporation, the Fellows of Harvard College, has just grown by 3 new members who are added to the original 5, and I think we're headed for 13 in an expanded corporation. Those 3 will probably be with us today. I haven't seen them, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them. The idea being that the university is now big enough to have outgrown a mode of governance that was invented in the 17th century. So I think we're going to see quite a lot more lively and quite a lot more transparent mode of governing going forward.
The men that you see in top hats in Harvard Yard today and the women you see with their red rosettes are all members of the Happy Observance of Commencement Committee. This committee was created in the 1840s by the first president of the Harvard Alumni Association, John Quincy Adams, who some of you will remember was also president of the United States. There you see one of the La Follette rosettes. The job of the people on the Happy Committee is to keep everybody happy on commencement day. And the weather subcommittee of the Happy Committee has certainly done their job today because it's a beautiful day here in Cambridge.
I like to think that the spirit of Peter Gomes, as you say, he died earlier this year and was immensely missed in this community. I like to think that his spirit has something to do with the weather. I'm sure that if he's been talking about it, he's done so in no uncertain terms and made quite clear that it never rains on Harvard's commencement.
That's quite a nice thought, Jeffrey. Yes, indeed. I'm sure the spirit of Peter Gomes is now part of that long, winding train back into eternity, and he is one of the spirits here in Harvard Yard today.
It's all right to think of Peter in those terms, I think. I don't think that the people one sees marching along here think of themselves as a train winding back into eternity. I don't think they give that a lot of thought. And there's the bell. You may notice in pan shots out over the yard that it's not really full. However, most of the undergraduates and graduate students are in other venues receiving their degrees now, and they will fill in as the afternoon goes on. We are moving at what I can say is practically a Kentucky Derby clip here. I can remember afternoons when we didn't really get started on time, and looks to me like we're going to start right on the button.
Here are the dignitaries, the Chief Marshal and Honor Guard, the Harvard Alumni Association President, the President and Fellows of Harvard College. There's the President of Harvard, Drew Gilpin Faust, in the gray suit.
Stephen Hyman there, the beard.
Jack
Glasses.
Reardon, the Executive Director of the Alumni Association, in the Harvard cap. Michael Smith to his right. Michael Smith, Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. Members of the Board of Overseers, the women in their black and white hats, the men in their top hats with the roses.
Steve Hyman, the provost, who's just going out of your picture, is stepping down this year after a decade as a perfectly wonderful provost. He's done a huge amount for this institution.
And here we are with the honorary degree recipients, Dudley Hirschbach.
That's David Sacher beside him.
Members of the Executive Committee of the Harvard Alumni Association, the sheriffs of Middlesex and Suffolk counties. And then the various president of the graduate school alumni associations.
It's a lot more stately than it used to be, I think, because there are so many more people involved than used to be the case. There was a time when that bell started to ring and the group came down off Widener Steps down that center aisle. If you weren't out of the way, you'd get trampled. I mean, it moved fast. Today is a great deal more stately, as I say. Those seats will fill up. Last minute preparations at the lectern. Pretty soon we're going to hear the gavel come down. Gavel that has been used now for many, many decades to bring this meeting to order.
The new graduates have adjourned for lunch to their houses and to their graduate and professional schools to receive their actual diplomas, and they will be joining us in the yard. So as the afternoon goes on, the yard will fill up in time for many alumni, our newest alumni, to hear the commencement speaker. There's President Drew Gilpin Faust.
Goodly number of Secret Service and Harvard University and Cambridge Police here today. After all, we have a sitting justice of the court. We have a foreign head of state, and I think probably it's a good thing to have that kind of protection in this day and age. Peter Malkin, glasses, turning toward us. I think that's Nannerl Cohane sitting next to him, former president of Wellesley College.
And former president of Duke.
Duke as well. Yes. Seated beside Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to the left of your screen. Well, I'm going to get away from there, but that's Bob Reischauer, who's the senior fellow of the corporation at this time.
The banners you see hanging from the trees are the shields of the undergraduate houses as well as of the graduate and professional schools.
I'm told that the banner hanging on the rear wall of the stage was hand sewn in Liberia and presented to Harvard on this occasion for the awarding of a degree to President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
The Veritas on the right, that's the symbol of Harvard. Veritas means truth.
Well, there's still a lot of activity in the yard, a lot of people filtering in, a lot of people who haven't yet found their seats, but I suspect we're going to get underway in a couple of minutes, whether people are seated or not.
And there we have Robert Bowie, Harvard class of 1973, the president of the Harvard Alumni Association, who will be presiding over the meeting this afternoon. There you get a view of what the crowd looks like from the stage, looking back towards the steps of Widener Library. And there we see the members of the Wampanoag tribe ready to receive the posthumous degree for Joel Iakamones.
And to their right, Provost Stephen Hyman and Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan. Today's Chief Marshal of the class of 1986.
I think everybody's really surprised about how quickly they moved up. Usually the parade takes longer and we start late, and here it is not quite 2:30 and everybody's ready to go. So I think we're probably waiting till the stroke of 2:30 before we're going to start.
We're close. We're very close. If you want to hear the gavel, I wouldn't suggest going out for a beer right now. Jack Reardon, Executive Director. That's John Pocock with the beard and the blue tie, one of the great historians of our time, taught for years at Johns Hopkins, and is widely known as one of the great writers of history, or especially early history, in living in the last several decades.
And he received his honorary degree this morning.
Might that be the oldest present alumnus?
Well, is it say George Barner? No, or no. Donald Brown? Those are our two oldest alums.
It looks like Dr. Donald something.
Oh, maybe that's Dr. Donald Brown. I don't know that he's a doctor, but maybe that's him.
It can get pretty warm out in the yard on a sunny day. If you come on a sunny day, you get warm. If you come, perish the thought, on a rainy day, you get wet. One of the worst examples of that was the tent that now covers the stage now replaces an older tent, which had a nasty habit of holding water up and then letting it go at a moment when the weight became too great to bear, covering, inundating, drenching the first probably 5 rows, who happened to be, of course, the oldest living alumni. Not a good thing. Dare I say it, it looks as though perhaps the president of the HAA is still preparing his remarks.
Looks like he's getting ready to start. Again, there's a view from the podium looking back towards Widener Library.
There's the gavel.
Honored guests, fellow alumni, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is wonderful to see everyone here. Welcome to the annual meeting of the Harvard Alumni Association. I'm Bob Bowie, a member of the class of 1973. As the 132nd president of the Alumni Association, the HAA for short, and following on the proud and long-standing tradition set by our first president, John Quincy Adams, I raise this gavel and call this meeting to order. This morning, upon graduation from the college and the graduate schools, over 6,000 new alumni joined our ranks. When the Harvard Alumni Association was founded in 1840, there were not more than 10,000 living alumni. Since that time, our alumni community has grown to more than 360,000 graduates living in over 185 countries. All graduates automatically, without any application or fees, become lifelong members of the HAA. Congratulations and a warm welcome to our alumni fellowship. Also, I want to congratulate the real heroes here, your parents, and the extended families and friends, the people who have believed in you and supported you personally and, of course, financially. The Alumni Association is made up by you and for you. Do not let the opportunity of associating with the 360,000 alumni pass you by. I'm going to tell you a brief personal story to illustrate this point. I was a townie. My father was a professor here. I always wanted to come and be a student here, but I had some sort of undiagnosed reading issues, and let's put it this way, I took a scenic route through high school. However, I applied as a freshman, and I didn't get in. I applied as a transfer student, and I did get in, and I was assigned to Kirkland House, but I decided that I wasn't going to really spend a lot of time there because I was convinced that I was going to be discovered to not be probably as sharp as everybody else in the college. So I had my room in Kirkland House, but I moved off to Putnam Avenue in a small apartment. And I studied, and I ended up graduating with honors, and I ended up being a Harvard College scholar twice. But my father was very angry with me. He said, "You're crazy not to know the students. The students and your classmates are an incredibly important part of your education." He would say, "You're going to learn as much over the lunch and dinner and the conversations as you are in any classroom." Well, I paid no attention. I was looking for academic credibility and not his kind of education. And I succeeded. But his words hung in my mind. They echoed. And eventually, much later, I thought I really should get to know who the Harvard community is. And I was asked 10 years ago to come up here and start doing HAA work. And the first reception I went to, I was I had the same old fears. And it was at Cronkite Hall, and Cronkite Hall has a long corridor that goes down, and then there is a coat rack, and then there are about 3 or 4 little side rooms where everybody was having wine and cheese and having a good time and talking. So I figured out this strategy. I would go down, I hung up my coat, but then I'd go into the side rooms and I'd look like I was looking for somebody who of course wasn't there. And then I would go to the next one and do the same thing, and do the next one and do the same thing, until all of a sudden I thought, if anybody figures out what I'm doing, they're gonna think I'm a lunatic. So I turned on my heels and I held out my hand to a group of 3 people, and it instantly became 4 people. And I was included, and the conversation was wonderful, and the fellowship was wonderful, and I made friends. And my experience over the last 10 years, every time I have been with a Harvard group, an alumni group, I've done the same thing. I've put out my hand and I've had the exact same reaction. I have, in the last 2 years, in traveling internationally for the Alumni Association, found the exact same reaction worldwide. And so I have to sort of concede that maybe my father was right. But I went and I decided that I would make these statements to you today, and I went back to see my father, who is 101 years old and 102 in August. And we're very, very close. We've been very close for a long time. But we have this incredibly biting humor, which is combatant, and this is part of our way we like to be with each other. So I told him, you know, I'm going to speak to the alumni at graduation, and I'm going to tell them that you were right. And this wry smile came across his face, and he said, it took you 40 years to figure out I was right? And then he really got the impish look, and he said, you always were a slow learner. So I'm telling you, class of 2011, in 40 years, I'm going to be leading the parade here at the age of roughly 101. And I got the genes, so I mean it. But I'm going to tell you, if any one of you come up to me and you say to me, after 40 years, I've just discovered the HAA, and it's a fabulous place, I'm going to tell you 2 things. It took you 40 years, and you were always slow, weren't you? Use the Alumni Association. It's the continuation of your education, and it will change your world. It changed mine. Turning now in your program, you will find the words to the 13th century popular graduation hymn that celebrates youth, looks to the future, and honors the academic community that has brought us all together. Please join me in singing Gaudiamus Igitur.
Amen.
Following on the tradition, let us recognize 3 senior alumni who led the alumni parade this afternoon. From the college class of 1930, Master of Arts class of 1935, and Doctor of Philosophy class of 1955, Donald F. Brown, our oldest male alumnus, who will celebrate his 103rd birthday this November. I have a role model. And presenting the oldest college class representing the oldest college class of 1929, George Barner. And from the class of 1942, Marjorie Prince Thomas, who will be 93 years old this November. I have 3 role models. Moving from our most senior alumni to our most junior, 9 years ago, President Lawrence H. Summers initiated the planning for the Crimson Summer Academy as part of Harvard's ongoing commencement to increasing the access of low-income students to higher education. In the summer of 2008, the university welcomed its 5th cohort of high school sophomores from Boston and Cambridge, and they are here with us today, alumni of the Crimson Summer Academy. After living and studying on campus for 3 consecutive summers, the Crimson Scholars, as these outstanding young people are known, have been accepted at excellent colleges and universities. Now we'd like to ask them to stand so that we can honor this class of CSA scholars with our deepest respect and our best wishes for their continuing success in the future. And speaking of recognition, it is one of the privileges of the president of the Harvard Alumni Association to acknowledge several individuals who are especially important to alumni activities and to Harvard. President Barack Obama said of the current U.S. Secretary of Education, today's Chief Marshal, "When it comes to school reform, Arnie is the most hands-on of practitioners. For Arnie, school reform isn't just a theory in a book, it's a cause of his life." As a child in Chicago, Mr. Duncan spent afternoons in his mother's tutoring program for inner-city children, and also worked there during a year away from college. This experience helped shape his understanding of the challenges facing urban education and convinced him that education was the only sure path out of poverty and the only way to achieve a more equal and just society. At 6 feet 5 inches tall, Mr. Duncan credits basketball with his team-oriented and highly disciplined work ethic. He was co-captain of Harvard's basketball team, named a first-team academic All-American, and has played basketball with Michael Jordan, a professional team in Australia, and President Obama. He joined the Chicago Public Schools in 1999 and served as CEO of the school system for 7.5 years. In 2010, Mr. Duncan received the Robert Coles Call of Service Award for his work in education reform and has served on the Board of Overseers for Harvard College and the Visiting Committee for Harvard's Graduate School of Education. I am thrilled to present the man elected by his classmates to be Chief Marshal of this year's 25th reunion class, Mr. Arnie Duncan. On June 30th, I will turn over the gavel to one of the Alumni Association's most enthusiastic supporters, a very good friend, a member of the college class of 1983 and Graduate School of Education in 1986. She has given generously her time and energy to the university and to the HAA in particular. Ms. President-elect Ellen Reeves, will you please stand? I am now pleased to announce the election results for Harvard's Board of Overseers and the elected directors of the Harvard Alumni Association. Please hold your applause until all the names in each category are announced. The 5 elected for the Board of Overseers will serve 6-year terms. Flavia Almeida, MBA 94, São Paulo, Brazil. Richard W. Fisher, AB 71, Dallas, Texas. Verna C. Gibbs, AB 75, San Francisco, California. Nicole M. Parent, AB 93, Greenwich, Connecticut. Kenji Yoshima, AB 91, New York, New York. Congratulations. The following 6 alumni have been elected as directors of the Harvard Alumni Association to serve 3-year terms. Rohit Chopra, AB 04, Washington, D.C. Tiziana Deering, MPA 2000, Bedford, Massachusetts. Katie Williams Foz, AB 83, Atlanta, Georgia. Charlene Lee, AB 88, MBA 93, San Mateo, California. Sonia Molina, DMD 89, MPH 89, Los Angeles, California. James A. Starr, AB 83, Chicago, Illinois. I would now like to introduce the Senior Fellow of the Harvard Corporation, Robert Reischauer, for a special announcement.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm not on your official program. I hope you will tolerate my brief, unscheduled appearance. With Bob Bowie just having announced the results of the election for the Board of Overseers and for the directors of the Harvard Alumni Association, I wanted to briefly note that we have elected 3 new members to the corporation by action of the governing boards taken yesterday afternoon. We will expand as of July 1st from 7 to 10 members. The 3 new members that have been added are Lawrence Bacow, JD 1976, MPP 1978, PhD 1978. Larry will step down this summer as the highly regarded president of Tufts University. He's the former chancellor of MIT. Susan Graham, AB 1964, will be another addition to the corporation. She is a distinguished computer scientist at Berkeley, former president of the Board of Overseers, and a former HAA elected director, and a past recipient of the Harvard Medal. Last but certainly not least is Lawrence O'Donnell, Joseph O'Donnell, AB 1967. How could I do that when you're sitting looking at me like this? MBA 1971, as somebody said yesterday, a force of nature, not only in the Boston area, where he's an influential business executive, but throughout the business community and the policy community in the United States. Joe was also an overseer and also an HHA director, and is one of the most engaged and admired alumni leaders. These three additions, as some of you can remember from the emails we have sent out, stems from a decision by the corporation after a year and a half of governance review to expand to 13 members to increase our capability and our ability to fulfill the responsibilities that have been placed on that board. I want to thank all of you for the input that you have provided, not just the names that have been suggested, but also the suggestions you have made to reform the governance system of this university. The search itself included an opportunity to learn about hundreds of distinguished nominees and has been, to me and the members of the search committee, a vivid illustration of the extraordinary range of accomplishments of Harvard's alumni, not just in the United States, but around the world. I thank you, and I pledge to you that we will be serving Harvard in a stronger and a better way in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and congratulations to all those elected and selected. We look forward to your contributions to Harvard's future. I would now like to introduce the president of the university, Drew Gilpin Faust, for a special presentation.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, Harvard faculty, alumni, students, and staff. Harvard's charter, dating from 1650 and making Harvard the oldest corporation in the Western Hemisphere, called for, and I quote, the education of the English and Indian youth of this country. One of these youths was a young Wampanoag scholar and Harvard student named Joel Iacombs. He came from Martha's Vineyard and spent 4 years at Harvard College studying Latin, Greek, rhetoric, geometry, and other subjects before he passed away just before he could receive his degree at commencement in 1665. It is fitting in this year of the celebration of the 375th anniversary of the founding of Harvard that we are able to award a special posthumous degree to Joel Iacombs in the presence of his descendants and of representatives from the Wampanoag tribes of Mashpee and Gayhead, Aquinnah. We are proud today to welcome Joel Iacombs into the ranks of Harvard alumni as its newest member and at the same time one of our oldest. We celebrate not only the accomplishments of a 17th century leader and scholar lost all too early in his life and career, but we also reaffirm ideas fundamental to the origin of Harvard: a commitment to the diversity of students, a commitment to the communities in which the college was founded, and a commitment to the power of education to transform lives. ideas that remain central to Harvard now and for the future. It is in this spirit and by virtue of authority delegated to me by the two governing boards that I now confirm a special posthumous bachelor's degree upon Joel I. Coombs, member of the Harvard College class of 1665. I ask Tiffany Smalley, Harvard class of 2011, and a member of the Wampanoag tribe, and Bernard Coombs, a descendant of Joel I. Coombs, to come forward and each receive a diploma with Mr. I. Coombs' degree. They will be joined by Cedric Cromwell, chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, and Cheryl Andrews-Maltez, chairwoman of the Wampanoag tribe of Gay Head, Aquina.
The Harvard Alumni Association confers the Harvard Medal, our highest honor, for extraordinary service to the university. We recognize those whose devotions has been exemplary and inspirational. In your program, you will see the many contributions of today's three recipients. President Faust will read the citations. Will each medalist please stand as your name is announced?
Albert Carnesale, AM 78. That's 1978. You were a towering source of strength for the Harvard community, serving as a professor and dean of the Kennedy School, fostering a new era of collegiality, curiosity, and cross-school collaboration as provost, and providing incisive intellectual leadership to this university and to several United States presidents on international affairs and the security of the nation. Albert Carnesale. Francis Ferguson, AM 66, PhD 73. Your service to Harvard knows no bounds. As president of the Board of Overseers, as a leader on visiting committees, and as a thoughtful voice on governance, you have acted with energy, creativity, and resolve, advancing the university's devotion to learning and helping imagine its future. Francis Ferguson. Peter Malkin, AB 55, JD 58. Inspiring all who care deeply for Harvard, you have been a true university citizen, serving as a trusted advisor to presidents and deans, championing public service as a core university ideal, and making it possible through your extraordinary generosity for new generations of outstanding young men and women to fulfill their dreams of a Harvard education. Peter Malkin.
Congratulations again to all of our Harvard medalists. I now welcome the treasurer and member of the Harvard Corporation, James Rothenberg, AB 68, MBA 70, for a salute to the alumni.
President Faust, Your Excellency President Johnson Sirleaf, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Today is a day of celebration, and I can think of no more appropriate occasion than to thank you all for all you do for Harvard. You are the alumni, students, parents, and friends who have supported Harvard in so many ways. Thank you for all you have done, and thank you for your unfailing dedication to this great university. I am pleased to report that record numbers of alumni and students supported the university, Harvard College, and the schools this past year in myriad ways. We witnessed extraordinary examples of the volunteerism and philanthropy that have come to define the Harvard community around the world. And the Harvard Alumni Association, under the dynamic leadership of Bob Bowie, has played a pivotal role. This year alone, nearly 24,000 alumni volunteers shared their time and talents with the university. Some interviewed a record-breaking number of nearly 35,000 college applicants. Others led more than 200 Harvard clubs and interest groups. Many continued the university's tradition of public and community service through the Alumni Association programs. Others championed highly successful reunion and gift committee efforts. And these efforts alone drew over 6,600 alumni and guests to Cambridge this week and helped generate nearly 77,000 gifts this academic year. Your generosity opens doors. The Harvard College Fund, under the focused leadership of Steve Waters and Will York, continued its important work. With the support of the reunion classes, along with a broad-based alumni response, the fund has helped to ensure that talented students from across the globe and from every imaginable background have greater access to a Harvard education than ever before. Thanks to the Harvard College Fund, these young men and women in the classroom, on the stage, in the laboratory, on the playing field, and particularly this year on the basketball court, stand side by side with a world-class faculty and staff pushing the limits of excellence. The result will be the next generation of leaders ready to make a difference in the lives of people around the world. I also would like to take a moment to recognize the outstanding leadership of the Harvard College Parents Fund. Lori and Ted Samuels and Jarmel and Peter Sloan, we are grateful to you for your enthusiasm and hard work. For half a century, the Harvard and Radcliffe classes of 1961 have exemplified incredible loyalty and commitment, perhaps never more so than this year. Not only can they boast the largest classmate attendance in a 50th reunion in history, they have also broken the all-time reunion gift record for any Harvard class by raising a rather remarkable $61 million. reunion gift program chairs David Crosby, Carol Lieberman, and Josh Young, and gift chairs Jerry Jordan and David Richards are with us this afternoon. Would all of you please stand and be acknowledged for a job well done? To commemorate their 30th reunion, the Harvard and Radcliffe class of 1981 is well on their way to setting a new standard for immediate use fundraising at Harvard. The class has a history of breaking reunion records, and it is on the cusp of setting at least 2 more. We would like to recognize reunion program chairs David Ramsey and Robin Worth, and gift chairs George Alex, Jean-Marc Chappes, John Hanson, Carl Martinetti, Penny Pritzker, Lisa Rumel, and Rob Smith. Please stand. We got somebody. In celebration of their 25th reunion, the Harvard and Radcliffe class of 1986 is poised to reach 4 major reunion milestones. The class has achieved the highest classmate turnout in a 25th reunion history. They have exceeded their immediate use funding target, and their class gift and participation goals are well within reach. Represented here, I hope they all caught that one. Represented here are the reunion program chairs Rob Fox, Joel Getz, Heather Johnston, Jeannie Thorndike, and gift chairs Jim Kralik, Q-Song Lee, Bill Pate, Robert Pines, and Angela Ferry Schroeder. Please stand so we can thank you for your efforts. In keeping with the time-honored 25th reunion tradition, all attending members of the class of 1986 are on the platform with us this afternoon. I ask you to stand as a class and be recognized. Our sincere appreciation to all of you. And while we're at it, would all of the members of the Harvard College Reunion Program Committees and Harvard College Fund Reunion Gift Committees please stand and be acknowledged for your tremendous dedication and hard work this year. A final word of thanks to our seniors, the newest members of our alumni community, for their many contributions to Harvard these past 4 years. The Senior Class Committee, which organizes numerous events during the year, including Class Day, is represented on stage today by Sam Novi and Moira Forberg, the first and second marshals of the class. A second group of seniors, led by co-chairs Seth Bohr, Courtney Cronin, Zach Frankel, Casey O'Donnell, and Alex Tureen, have really set another record-breaking senior campaign gift with an outstanding 82% participation rate and a record number of leadership gifts. Thank you. Let's get the marshals and co-chairs pleased to stand and be recognized, and again, our thanks to the entire class of 2011. Finally, we are all grateful to you, Harvard's global community of alumni, students, parents, and friends. And we celebrate all that you do. You are profoundly generous. You have given of your time and your resources. You have shared your creativity and energy for the enduring benefit of this remarkable institution as it continues to expand the boundaries of knowledge here and around the world. Thank you very much.
Jim, thank you for your report and your always sound leadership. Please join the Harvard University Band and the Commencement Choir in their performance of Harvardiana. Thank you for that rousing rendition. Our next speaker is about to complete her 4th year leading our great university. She came to this role at an exciting and challenging time for Harvard, and it is not possible for the university to be in better hands. Her strong leadership is exemplified by a series of very important initiatives, The most recent has been to lead a review process implementing important changes in governance for the first time in more than 300 years. It is with great pride and enthusiasm that I present the 28th President of Harvard University, Drew Gilpin Faust.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Distinguished guests, Harvard faculty, alumni, students, staff, friends. As we celebrate the class of 2011 and welcome them to our alumni ranks, I feel a special sense of connection to those who just received their first degrees, to use the words with which I officially greeted them this morning. I began as president when they arrived as freshmen, and we have shared the past 4 years here together. 4 world-changing years, from the global financial crisis to a historic presidential election, to the popular uprisings of the Arab Spring, not to mention earthquakes, tsunamis, and tornadoes. The choices and circumstances these new alumni face are likely to be quite different from the ones they expected when they moved into Harvard Yard in September 2007. And I hope and trust that they too are transformed, shaped by all they have learned and experienced as Harvard College undergraduates. Their departure marks a milestone for me as well, one that prompts me as Harvard enters its 375th year to reflect on what these 4 years have meant for universities and what universities must do in this time of worldwide challenges, when knowledge is becoming ever more vital to our economies, our societies, and to us all. Education has never mattered more to individual lives. In the midst of the Great Recession, the unemployment rate for college graduates in the United States was less than half that for those with just a high school diploma. Those with bachelor's degrees earn half again as much as high school graduates. Doctoral or professional degrees nearly double, on average, earnings again. And education, of course, brings far more than economic benefits. We believe that the graduates of institutions like Harvard are instilled with analytic and creative habits of mind, with a capacity for judgment and discernment that can guide them through a lifetime that promises an abundance of change. But education is not just about individuals. Education has never mattered more to human progress and the common good. Much of what we have undertaken at Harvard in these past 4 years reflects our fundamental sense of that responsibility, to educate individuals who will understand the difference between information and wisdom, who will pose the questions and create the knowledge that can address the world's problems, who can situate today's realities in the context of the past, even as we prepare for the future. Yet universities have been deeply affected as events have reshaped the educational landscape in the United States and abroad. The cost of higher education has become the source of even greater anxiety for American families. At a time when college matters more than ever, it seems increasingly less affordable. Access to higher education is a national priority, and at Harvard we have significantly enhanced our financial aid policies to make sure that Harvard is attainable for talented students regardless of their financial circumstances. This is fundamental to sustaining Harvard's excellence. More than 60% of undergraduates received financial aid from Harvard this year. Their families paid an average of $11,500 for tuition and room and board. The composition of our student body has changed as a result, and we have reached out to students who previously would not have imagined they could attend. This past year, for example, nearly 20% of the freshman class came from families with incomes below $60,000. We want to attract and invest in the most talented students, those likely to take fullest advantage of their experience at Harvard College. Our graduate and professional schools recognize a similar imperative and seek to ensure that graduates are able to choose careers based on their aspirations rather than on a need to repay educational debt. The Kennedy School, for example, has made increasing financial aid its highest priority. Harvard Medical School's enhanced financial aid policies now assist over 70% of its student body. Like American families, institutions of higher education face intensified financial challenges as well. At our distinguished public universities, pressures on state funding threaten fundamental purposes. The governor of Pennsylvania, for example, proposes cutting state appropriations for higher education by half. Leaders of the University of California system warned last week of a possible tuition increase of 32% in response to reduced state support. Some in Congress are threatening to reduce aid for needy students and to constrain the federal funding that fuels scientific research at Harvard and at America's other distinguished universities. By contrast, support for higher education and research is exploding in other parts of the globe. In China, for example, undergraduate student numbers have more than quadrupled in little over a decade. India has more than doubled its college attendance rate and plans to do so again by 2020. Higher education, these nations recognize, is a critical part of building their futures. As battles rage in Washington over national priorities and deficit reduction, we need to make that case for America as well. Universities are an essential part of the solution, providing economic opportunity and mobility, producing discoveries that produce prosperity, create jobs, and improve human lives. And American higher education, in its dedication to knowledge in breadth and depth, beyond instrumental or narrow technical focus, has proved a generator of imagination, wisdom, and creativity, the capacities that serve as foundations for building our common future. When I met last year with university presidents in China, they wanted to talk not about science or technology, where we all know they have such strength, but instead about the liberal arts and how to introduce them in their country. They believed that those principles of broad learning had yielded the most highly regarded educational system in the world. This year, Tsinghua University in Beijing introduced a new required course called Moral Reasoning and Critical Thinking. It is modeled on Professor Michael Sandel's famous Harvard undergraduate class, Justice. And he lectured in that course in Beijing last week. This is a time for us to convince Americans of what these Chinese educational leaders affirmed to me, that we in the United States have developed a model of higher education that is unsurpassed in its achievements and distinction, in the knowledge it has created, and in the students it has produced. It must be both supported and adapted to help secure the future in which our children and their children will live. That future encompasses a second powerful force shaping higher education. When Thomas Friedman famously proclaimed that the world was flat in 2005, he drew attention to the ways in which ideas and economies no longer respect boundaries. Knowledge, he emphasized, is global. Yet societies, cultures, and beliefs vary in ways that affect us ever more deeply. If the world is flat, it is far from homogeneous. Universities must embrace the breadth of ideas and opportunities unfolding across the world, and at the same time advance understanding of the differences among distinctive cultures, histories, and languages. I am repeatedly struck when I meet with undergraduates at the intensity of their interest in language courses, which at Harvard now include nearly 80 languages. These undergraduates understand the kind of world they will live in, and they want to be prepared. One member of the class of 2011, who will be a Marshall Scholar next year, told me about how she took up the study of Chinese at Harvard. And when she traveled abroad, she recognized how speaking the language transformed her relationship to those she met. She said, "When you learn a language, you get goggles, my Chinese goggles. You have different kinds of conversations with people in their own language. We're going to grow up in the world together in countries with such intertwined futures. We are," she concluded, "an international generation." In these past 4 years, Harvard has reached into the world, and the world has reached into Harvard as never before. I have traveled as Harvard president on 5 continents. I have met with thousands of the more than 50,000 Harvard alumni who live outside the United States. And I have visited Harvard initiatives that address issues from AIDS in Botswana to preschool education in Chile, to Renaissance studies in Italy, to disaster response in China. Our new Harvard Center Shanghai joins 15 offices supporting Harvard faculty and student research and engagement abroad. We have, over the past several years, launched the University-wide China Fund, the South Asia Initiative, and an enhanced African Studies effort that recently received a coveted Title VI recognition as a National Resource Center. Undergraduate experiences abroad have more than doubled since 2003. Design school field studios reach from the favelas of Sao Paulo to the townships of Mumbai. And Harvard's clinical and research opportunities in medicine and public health range from tuberculosis in Siberia to adolescent health in Fiji. Here in Cambridge, teaching incorporates an enhanced global perspective from newly required international legal studies at the law school to an international immersion experience beginning next year for all MBA students at the business school, where 40% of case studies now have a significant international component. And we benefit as well from an increasingly international faculty and student body, 20% of our degree students overall. But it is not just knowledge that knows no boundaries. The world's most critical challenges are often borderless as well. And it is these pressing problems that attract the interest and talents of so many in our community. Universities are critical resources in addressing issues from economic growth to global health, to sustainable cities, to privacy and security, to therapeutics. To borrow a phrase from the business school mission statement, Harvard faculty and students want to make a difference in the world by creating and disseminating critical knowledge. And we increasingly understand how to bring the elements of knowledge creation together by crossing intellectual and disciplinary boundaries, just as we cross international ones. I speak often of one university, for it is clear that we work most effectively when we unite Harvard's unparalleled strengths across its schools and fields, and do so at every stage of the educational process, from college freshmen through our most accomplished senior faculty members. The new Harvard Global Health Institute is a case in point, engaging more than 250 faculty from across the university in addressing issues that range from post-earthquake response in Haiti and Chile to reducing cardiovascular disease in the developing world. We have established an undergraduate secondary field in global health, and over 1,000 college students are involved in courses, internships, and related activities. Similarly, the Harvard Center for the Environment draws on graduate and undergraduate students and more than 100 faculty in law, engineering, history, earth sciences, medicine, health policy, and business, to look comprehensively at problems like carbon capture and sequestration, or the implications of the Gulf oil spill for structures of environmental regulation. This brings us finally to innovation, a third powerful force in higher education and in the wider world in which higher education plays such an important part. Students and faculty working together in new ways and across disciplines are developing wondrous things, from inhalable chocolate to inhalable tuberculosis vaccine. Our undergraduates have invented a soccer ball that can generate enough power to light villages. Business school students are launching more and more startups. Medical school experiments have reversed the signs of aging, in mice at least. The dean of our School of Education has been named one of the region's foremost innovators for inventing a new degree, a doctorate in educational leadership, the EDLD, whose graduates, trained by faculty from the business, Kennedy, and education schools, will be ready to lead change in American schools. New ideas and new ways of enabling those ideas to reach a wider world. That is the essence of what we are about. And we as an institution have some new ideas about how we do our own work as well. We've innovated after 350 years with governance, expanding and enhancing the corporation. We are innovating after almost as long with the organization of our libraries, at the heart of how we learn and teach. We're in the second successful year of a new undergraduate curriculum. We created a new School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. We're exploring new ways of teaching with new technologies and new partners. We're integrating the arts into our teaching across fields, recognizing that the act of making, whether in the arts or perhaps in engineering, is an essential part of creative learning. In the fall, we will open a new innovation lab to foster team-based invention that connects students across disciplines and with local entrepreneurs. Perhaps every generation believes that it lives in special times, and perhaps every cohort of graduates is told just that at ceremonies like these. But both the depth of the challenges we face and the power of knowledge, and thus of universities, to address them is unprecedented. Harvard must embrace this responsibility, for it is accountable to you, its alumni, and to the wider world. Universities are among humanity's greatest innovations and among humanity's greatest innovators. Through universities, we find a better future where our graduates and their children and the greater global community may lead lives of peace, prosperity, and purpose in the centuries to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Faust, for your unwavering spirit and unwavering leadership. Each year we sing Radcliffe, now we rise to greet thee, in recognition of the many graduates of Radcliffe who have played and continue to play such an important role in the life of the university. Would everyone now please stand and join in the singing? The words are on your program. Our speaker today is a Harvard Kennedy School alumna who was inaugurated in 2006 as the 24th President of Liberia and is the first African female elected head of state. Her path to the presidency was met with resistance in many different, oftentimes terrifying forms. Between serving as the nation's finance minister in the late 1970s and being elected president, she narrowly escaped execution, was forced to flee into exile, was charged with treason, jailed twice, and averted plots of assassination. Yet, she never relinquished her pursuit of social justice and political reform for her country. Known as Ma Ellen, she is the focus of hope for her country and has pledged to bring the motherly sensitivity and emotion to the presidency needed to heal a country racked by so many years of violence and warfare. She also brings a toughness from being a professional in a male-dominated world. When asked by an American television anchor if being a woman would make her a soft leader, she responded, "Try me. You'll be shocked." She continues to face the undaunted tasks of revitalizing Liberia's collapsed economy, reducing its national debt, and reforming its international reputation. Her work, both nationally and internationally, has earned her a reputation as a strong leader, an advocate for economic prudence, and an enemy of corruption. In 2010, Newsweek listed her as one of the 10 best leaders in the world. It is my privilege to introduce her, Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the President of the Republic of Liberia.
Thank you so much. President Drew, Gilpin, Faust, President and members of the Harvard Board of Overseers, members of Harvard Corporation, faculty, staff, students, fellow honorands, fellow alumni, members of the graduating class of 2011, parents, family, friends, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored not only to be the 360th commencement speaker at my alma mater, but to do so in the year Harvard University, as the oldest institution of learning in America, celebrates 375 years of preparing minds for service and leadership. Thank you for the invitation, and congratulations to you, Dr. Faust, the first female president of Harvard University. It is a great pleasure to share in Harvard's distinguished and storied history. Harvard has produced presidents, prime ministers, a United Nations Secretary General, leaders in business, government, and the church. But more than anything, Harvard has produced the men and women on whose talents our society become functional. The leaders who remain learners, and the learners who become leaders in classic disciplines and religious dimension, in modern technologies and social processes. An event 4 decades ago put me on a path that has led me to where I am today. I participated as a junior official of Liberia's then Department of Treasury in a National Development Conference sponsored by our National Planning Council and a team of Harvard advisors working with Liberia. My remarks, which challenged the status quo, landed me in my first political trouble. The head of the Harvard team, recognizing in a closed society the potential danger I faced, facilitated the process that enabled me to become a Mason Fellow at the Kennedy School of Government. The Edward S. Mason program provided me with the opportunity to study a diversified curriculum for a master's degree in public administration. Perhaps more importantly, in terms of preparation for leadership, the program enabled us to learn and interact with other fellows and classmates who represented current and potential leaders from all continents. I readily engaged with that opening, thrilled to be among the world's best minds, yet overwhelmed by the reality of being a part of the world's most prestigious institution of learning. As a result, I did things that I should have done, like studying hard, going to the stacks to do the research for my papers and better knowledge of the history of my country. I'm glad there's so many people in here that, like me, know what the stacks were. Those were those isolated things that contain books, which people used to read and others used to write before Google Scholar was created. I also did things I should not have done, like exposing myself to frostbite when I joined students much younger than me to travel by bus to Washington, D.C. to demonstrate against U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. It is difficult to imagine arriving at all that I have achieved today without the starting opportunity to study at Harvard. It is therefore for me a profound honor to be counted as an alumni. I speak with utter gratitude and humility when I salute my fellow graduates who share the rich Harvard heritage of academic excellence and truthful pursuits. In preparation for this address, I was pleasantly surprised to learn how far back Liberia's connection to Harvard goes. The establishment in 1862 of Liberia College, now the University of Liberia, the second oldest institution of higher learning in West Africa, was led and funded by the trustees of Donation for Education in Liberia. Simon Greenleaf, the Harvard College law professor who drafted Liberia's independence constitution of 1847, was the founder and president of that institution, which is still in existence today. The first Liberian graduate of Harvard did so in 1920, and since then, there has been a studied trail of Liberians to Cambridge, over 30 to my count. Most of them returned home to pursue successful careers. Thank you, Harvard. Thank you, President Faust. And thank you to the many Mason program professors, dead and alive, for the compliments you paid when my papers and interventions were top rate, and for the patience you showed when I struggled with quantitative analysis. The self-confidence, sometimes called arrogance, that comes from being a Harvard graduate can also lead one down a dangerous path. It did for me. 1 year after my return from Cambridge, I was at it again. In a commencement address at my high school alma mater, I questioned the government's failure to address long-standing inequities in the society. This forced me into exile and a staff position at the World Bank. Other similar events would follow in a life in and out of country, in and out of jail, in and out of professional service. There were times when I thought death was near, and times when the burden of standing tall by one's convictions seemed only to result in failure. But through it all, my experience sends a strong message that failure is just as important as success. You cannot appreciate success if you do not know failure. Just yesterday, a student here. Today, I stand proud but humble as the first woman president of my country, democratically elected. This has allowed me to lead the protracted processes of national transformation, change needed to address a long-standing environment characterized by such awesome challenges as a collapsed economy, huge domestic and external debt arrears, dysfunctional institutions, ruined infrastructure and social capital, poor regional and international relationships, all completely degraded by the scourge of civil war. After election, I moved quickly in mobilizing our governance team, sought support from partners, and tackled the challenges. In 5 years, we formulated the laws and policies and strategies for growth and development. We removed the international sanctions on our primary exports, introduced and made public a cash-based budget, increased revenue by over 400%, and mobilized foreign direct investment worth 16 times the size of the economy when I assumed office. We built a small professional Army and Coast Guard, moved the economy from negative growth to average annual 6%. We have virtually eliminated a $4.9 billion external debt, settled a large portion of international institutional debt, and recrafted domestic arrears and suppliers' credit. Moreover, we restored electricity and pipe-borne water lacking in our capital for 2 decades, reconstructed 2 modern universities and referral hospitals, constructed or reconstructed roads, bridges, schools, training institutions, local government facilities throughout the country. We established and strengthened the pillars of integrity, brought back the Peace Corps. We mobilized financial and technical resources from U.S. foundations, sororities, and individuals for support of programs aimed at the education of girls, the empowerment of adolescent youth, and improved working conditions for market women. To build a nation requires unremitting tasks. Nevertheless, the challenges of sustained Liberian growth and development remain both awesome and performable. Our stability is eroded by thousands of returnees from U.S. prisons and regional refugee camps, the bulk of whom are lacking in technical skills. Our peace is threatened by furious neighborhood tensions where we live. 2 out of our 3 neighbors have either experienced or narrowly avoided civil war in the past year, and we patiently host refugees since not even a decade ago, it was they who hosted so many of us. Implementation of our economic development agenda is constrained not by funding alone, but also by slow project execution and low absorptive capacity. Plans to enhance performance in governance move slower than desired due to long-standing institutional decay and a corrupted value system of dependency and dishonesty. The development of infrastructure is hindered by the high capital cost of restoration engendered by the lack of maintenance and exacerbated by wanton destruction covering more than 2 decades of failure. Yet, today, we are proud that Liberian children are back in school, preparing themselves to play a positive role in the new Liberian society. Our 7-year-olds do not hear guns and do not have to run. They can smile again. With multivariate tasks and transformation in tow, we can say with confidence that we have moved our war-torn nation from turmoil to peace, from disaster to development, from dismay to hope. And in this, we are proud to note that it was the Liberian women who fought the final battle for peace. They came, their number and conviction, the only thing greater than their diversity, to demonstrate for the end to our Civil War and to rededicate their ardent energies to the peaceful pursuit of progress. I am therefore proud to stand before you as humbled by their resolute sacrifices to symbolize also the aspirations and expectations of Liberian women, African women, and I dare say women worldwide. I stand before you today equally proud to be the first woman president of our African continent, a continent that has embraced the process of change and transformation. I'm proud that Liberia could once again become an elevated beacon of hope in Africa, an opportunity to join a few others as a post-conflict success story. Africa must no longer be regarded as a continent of countries with corrupt big men who rule with iron fists. It is no longer the dark continent in continual economic freefall, wallowing in debt, poverty, and disease. When he addressed the Ghanaian Parliament in 2009, President Barack Obama reminded the people of Africa that it would no longer be the great men of the past who would transform the continent. The future of all our countries is in the hands of you young people. People like you, he said, brimming with talent and energy and hope, who can claim the future that so many in previous generations never realized. All tensions being subdued in Africa today, a realizable future can be reclaimed by solid tenets of accountability. At the beginning of this year, 17 elections were scheduled across our continent. In 1989, there were 3 democracies in sub-Saharan Africa. By 2008, there were 23. That, to me, is progress. In the electoral process itself, there is significant improvement from the days when violent overthrows were the default means of transition. A clear recent example stands out in West Africa. Although they did not get as much focus as post-election violence in Côte d'Ivoire, Niger and Guinea proved exemplary when the military oversaw democratic elections, turned power over to the civilian government, and returned to the barracks. In the case of Côte d'Ivoire, the Economic Community of West African States and the African Union recognized a non-incumbent as the legitimate winner. In previous instances, African states would stubbornly back the incumbent in different parties in conflict. Today, African states act in concert on many substantive issues, adopting a common African position and negotiating as one. That, for us, is progress. We are beginning to see evidence of a progressive environment, not merely in overall accountability, but also in the performance of the African economy and in the economic status of its people. The index of growth has been growing at over 5% over the past decade. A recent African Development Bank report measured the rise of the middle class in Africa, totaling 313 million out of 1 billion Africans. The countries experiencing exceptional growth in their middle class include Ghana, Mozambique, Mali, Tanzania, Cape Verde, Botswana, Burkina Faso, and Rwanda. The middle class is changing the face of Africa. Instability and years of conflict in Liberia have pushed us to the bottom of this table in terms of the size of our middle class. We are, however, preparing a development agenda that aims, through proper allocation of our vast natural resources, to graduate Liberia from development assistance in 10 years and to propel Liberia to a middle-income country by the year 2030. It will The future of Liberia and Africa must remain intimately linked if sustainable progress is ever to be realized and replicated. Meanwhile, I see optimistic signs of a continent on the upsurge, food and agriculture based, producing, manufacturing, trading, and cooperating more fully. I see an uncompromising emphasis on words like accountability, transparency, and reform as elements that must adjudicate closed-door decisions concerning African governments which seek re-election. And I see the emergence of youthful and truthful leaders, ever talented, ever tackling, ever learning the pathways ahead to progress and development, especially for the disadvantaged. I'm excited about Africa's future, and most so about Liberia's future. In a few months, the Liberian people will have the opportunity to select their political leadership. This means that Liberia will know a second peaceful democratic transition in 6 years. This in a country that was riven by political rivalries, tribalism, and civil war for 2 decades. It is nonetheless with cautious optimism that we approach this event and the future. Anxieties remain because we know that as impressive as Liberia's rebirth has been, our achievements remain fragile and reversible. Anxieties and misgiving aside, I feel utterly confident that in a decade-long career in public service, I may have learned many valuable lessons which I can share with you today. In my bumpy journey, I have come to value the virtues of hope and resilience. As an actor in Liberia's history, as it unfolded over the last 40 years, I have seen these characteristics come full circle. I was there in the early 1970s, a decade after independence movement had swept across Africa. Back then, the future appeared full of endless possibilities. But I also witnessed the gradual descent into militarism, sectarian violence, and divisive ethnic politics. I witnessed our country engulfed in the fires of a civil conflict that raged for almost 2 decades. But in my witness, I have also been blessed with the opportunity to watch and participate as the nation rises out of the ashes of war to become a force for peace in West Africa. With cautious optimism, it is my hope that I will continue to lead this nation to consolidate and realize the abundant dividends of peace. As much as I have lived and experienced, dear graduates of today, what you will know and what you do will far exceed it. History, it seems, is speeding up. After graduation, you leave the relative security, predictability, and certainty of these wars for a world full of accelerated uncertainties. Across the globe, entire societies are being transformed, new identities forged, and national stories retold. People your age across the world are becoming increasingly vocal about how they are governed and by whom. Old templates of control have been overturned as states struggle internally with issues about national character and destiny. People who heretofore had no say in those conversations are asserting themselves and taking a place at the table, with or without invitation. 10 years ago, information about the tragic events of September 11 came to us mainly through traditional media, radio, television, and CNN.com. There was no Facebook, no YouTube, no Twitter, and all the other social networking sites that my grandchildren now take for granted. In the intervening 10 years, young people like yourselves who graduated today have gone on to use technology to improve the overall quality of life and created wealth. In those 10 years, the world has become smaller and more connected. 10 years ago, the complex financial instruments of today would seem quaint to the hedge funds and investment banks of today. In those 10 years, our markets and our economies have become more swiftly connected and rapidly adjusted. Just 6 months ago, the Tunisian revolution began, leading rapidly and inexorably to fundamental change across North Africa and the Middle East. Could this have happened without digital social media or without heightened correlation of food prices across time and space? Could this have happened just 10 years ago with the same precondition but a different degree of connectivity? Can you imagine what the next 10 years will bring? The next 50? In the time before Friendster succumbed to Facebook, our world went through phases of transformation, and Harvard graduates, students, faculty, and commencement speakers have been key actors, writers, chronicles of those changes, quite impactful on Africa. Some, like U.S. Secretary of State George Marshall, have stood in this very yard before a graduating class such as yours to propose a massive post-World War II plan for reconstruction. This would lead to a takeoff in global economic growth, rebounding Europe and rebounding Asia, both of whom have been catalyzing forces behind Africa's own recent progress. When President John F. Kennedy, another Harvard graduate, spoke to this audience in 1956 as a junior senator from Massachusetts, he pointed to two keystones for progress, namely scholarly objectivity and technological capability. He said, "We need both the technical judgment and the disinterested viewpoint of the scholar to prevent us from becoming imprisoned by our own slogans. In newly democratic societies, where ballots are marked with distinctive icons as well as names, since many voters remain illiterate, the danger for sloganeering political populism is only greater and can lead down the road of war, not just bad policy choices." Kennedy would go on to launch the Peace Corps, which has impacted the lives of millions throughout the world by bringing Americans across the ocean, teaching students and training teachers, and making our world a smaller place. Ralph Ellison, speaking at the 1974 commencement, told graduates and the alumni, let us not be dismayed. Let us not lose faith, simply because the correctives we have set in motion and you have set in motion took a long time. Ellison believed that despite the challenge, the chances for national regeneration was there. In the most recent past, Bill Gates, a famous Harvard attendee, has made our world smaller by having us all speak the same dialect, by connecting us electronically and opening doors that just one generation only seemed to belong to the realm of science fiction. Today, because of him, we are closer to living in a global village. With the election of Harvard graduate Barack Obama to the presidency of the United States, the face of American politics has been altered for good. His presidency brings America another step closer to the fulfillment of the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King of an America where a person's worth, true worth, would be measured by the content of character and not the color of skin. In the sea change that this election represents, let me remind you, America, that Liberia has beat you on one score. We elected our first female president perhaps 11 years before the United States will do so. Today, I share more than a Harvard background with you. In a way, this is also a commencement year for me. Just as you end one joining today, graduates, and begin the next, so too I will in November. As my first term as president of Liberia comes to an end, I will be standing for re-election. The person who claims to be the strongest opposition contender is a Harvard graduate. But I want you to know that the incumbent, who is also a Harvard graduate, is determined to win in a truly free and fair process. The relationship between Harvard and Liberia is thus secured and in good hands. I urge you, Harvard graduates, class of 2011, to be fearless about the future. Just because something has not been done as yet doesn't mean it cannot be done. I was never deterred from running for president just because there had never been any other female elected as a head of state in Africa. Simply because political leadership in Liberia has always been a boys' club, it didn't mean it was right. And so I remain undeterred. Today, an unprecedented number of women hold leader positions in our country and throughout Africa, and the numbers increase annually. As you approach your future, there will be ample opportunity to become jaded and cynical, but I urge you to resist cynicism. The world is still a beautiful place, and change is possible. As I have noted here today, my path to the presidency was never straightforward or guaranteed. With prison, death threats, and exile, there was many opportunities to quit, to forget about the dream, yet we all persisted. I have always maintained the conviction that my country and people are so much better than our recent history indicates. I have come to appreciate its difficult moments, but I believe I'm a better leader, a better person, with a richer appreciation for the present because of my resilient past. For graduates of 2011, the size of your dreams must always exceed your current capacity to achieve them. If your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough. If you start off with a small dream, you may not have much left when it is fulfilled, because along the way, life will test your dreams and make demands on you. I am, however, bullish about the future of our world because of everyone in this yard, because of those who have graduated today. Fearlessness for the future, youthfulness of the heart, toughness for the distractions, creativeness for the complexities. These remain the indispensable ingredients of national and global transformation. Add to that, envelope, the elements of hope, robust hope and resilience, and there's no telling what can be accomplished. Go forth, graduates of 2011, with the wind behind you, and embrace a future that awaits you. I thank you.
Thank you, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Your life, dedicated to public service, continues to be an inspiration to us all. Please stand and join me now as we sing Fair Harvard. The words appear in your program. On behalf of the Harvard Alumni Association, once again, I want to warmly welcome and congratulate the class of 2011. I hope you will return often to Cambridge. I now hereby declare the 2011 meeting of the Harvard Alumni Association adjourned to reconvene on the 24th of May of 2012. Thank you all for coming.
And with that, we'll wrap up this meeting of the Harvard Alumni Association on the occasion of the 360th Harvard Commencement comes to a close. We heard some interesting remarks from both President Faust, who pointed out that 60% of college students are on financial aid from Harvard, and that Harvard is aggressively seeking to change the demographic of its student body by means of financial aid. We then heard from President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia, who spoke about her time here at Harvard as a Mason Fellow at the Kennedy School in the 1970s, and about how her time here had shaped her thinking and provided her with enormous background and training. She spoke about challenging the status quo and pointed out that while she was here, she had spent a lot of time in the stacks at Harvard and risked frostbite by demonstrating in Washington against the Vietnam War. Her gadflying forced her into exile from Liberia. She faced threats of death, of jail, and exile. Since her election, she has massively reshaped the country, from turmoil to peace, from disaster to development, from despair to hope. She credits Liberian women with helping to make Liberia the beacon of hope in Africa, and spoke about hope and resilience as being crucial to reshaping her country. She will be running for re-election at the end of her term.
And now we will close our program with the poem by Seamus Haney, Villanelle for an Anniversary, written for Harvard's 350th celebration in 1986. A spirit moved, John Harvard walked the yard. The atom lay unsplit, the west unwon. The book stood open and the gates unbarred. The maps dreamt on like moon dust, nothing stirred. The future was a verb in hibernation. A spirit moved, John Harvard walked the yard. Before the classic style, before the clapboard, all through the small hours of an origin, the books stood open and the gate unbarred. Night passage of a migratory bird, wing flap, gown flap. Like a homing pigeon, a spirit moved, John Harvard walked the yard. Was that his soul? Look, sped to its reward. Bright grace her works, a shooting star, an omen. The book stood open and the gate unbarred. Begin again when frosts and tests were hard. Find yourself or founder. Here, imagine. A spirit moves. John Harvard walks the yard. The book stands open and the gates unbarred.